Hello and good evening. Welcome to our final Medieval Life Spotlight program. We'll be getting started in about 5 minutes at 5:35, but in the meantime, please feel free to drop in the chat how you heard about this program and where you're coming from. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. I'm encouraging everyone to drop in the chat where you heard about this program and where you're coming from tonight, and we'll be getting started at 5:35. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. Tonight is our final Medieval Life Spotlight program, and we're welcoming everyone. We'll be getting started at around 5:35, and in the meantime, if you could just drop in the chat where you heard about tonight's program and where you're coming from. Thank you. All right, let's see. I'm here in Philadelphia, and I see there are a couple of other fellow Philadelphians here. We also have a couple people out in the suburbs of Philadelphia, Sunnyvale, California. Welcome. And we have a presenter actually joining us from California as well, so you're in good company. Haverford, Pennsylvania. Nice. So Harrisburg. All right. Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. Toronto, Canada. Beautiful. Welcome. We're going to get started in about 3 minutes. And right now I'm just asking people to drop in the chat where you're coming from tonight, and also to let us know how you heard about tonight's event. We have Lewes, Delaware. Welcome. I was there this summer. It's so beautiful. East Torresdale, Philadelphia, Budapest. Welcome.
Wow.
And we have a big crowd that we're anticipating tonight, so I just want to give people a few more minutes to trickle in. And for those of you that are wondering, we are going to be putting recorded videos of this series that I put together on the YouTube channel for the Rare Books Department of the Free Library of Philadelphia. So that's in process, and you can follow and subscribe to that channel, and it will be updated. And in the meantime, you can also reach out via Eventbrite if you're looking for a particular link and weren't able to receive it in the past. Thank you. All right, so we just need like another minute or so to just welcome folks. But if you're just joining us, my name is Susanna Rominska, Curator of Exhibitions at the Free Library of Philadelphia's Division of Cultural and Civic Engagement. And I'm joined tonight by Dot Porter and Adam Ward, and we're going to be getting into tonight's program in just a minute. But in the meantime, if you could join us in sharing where you heard about tonight's program, as well as where you're coming from tonight. Thank you. All right, so we're going to be getting started. thank you again for being here. This is the final event for our Medieval Life exhibit, which was installed at Parkway Central Library. And unfortunately, due to COVID, we were not able to open the exhibition in person. However, we have a really beautiful online presence that can be viewed at freelibrary.org/exhibitions. And through that website, you'll also be able to link to a number of online and digital resources that we'll be hearing more about from our guest curator, Dot Porter. So the format for tonight is that I'll be turning everything over to Dot shortly. She'll be giving you a little bit more context surrounding the exhibit as a whole, and then we'll be passing the mic all the way to the West Coast to Adam Ward. And he's really going to be taking us on this really wonderful journey with regards to music and medieval times. And I'm really looking forward to it. So I'm just so happy that you all are here. And Dot, whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right, let me share my screen. Thank you everybody so much for coming. As Susanna said, this is the last virtual event attached to the Medieval Life exhibition. And it's also the day that the exhibition came down. So Susanna was over at the library today, taking everything out of the gallery. So I'm going to show you some photos in a minute of the exhibition set up in the gallery. It was, you know, a beautiful exhibit. And thank you to everyone at the Free Library. The staff there everybody was wonderful to work with. Speaking as a curator, they helped me a lot. This was my first public exhibition. I had, a few years ago, I curated an exhibition at the Penn Library, which was quite different because the audience was just Penn. And so this was really aimed at a more sort of general public. So it was a really wonderful learning experience for me. And I'm actually really sad that the exhibition never opened. So there will be a complete video walkthrough of the exhibition that will be posted. And then there were several additional virtual events like this one that sort of riff off at various aspects of the exhibition. And so I hope that once there is sort of a central website for that, you'll all come back and find out more about it. So what is this Medieval Life exhibition? So it actually starts a few years ago. We being a group organized through the Philadelphia Area Consortium of Special Collections Libraries, and including 15 institutions in and around Philadelphia, got a grant from the Council on Library and Information Resources to digitize manuscripts in Philadelphia. And we ended up, over a course of 3 years, we ended up digitizing 475 codices, that is manuscripts that are shaped like books, and then many, many more leaves and cuttings, so bits that were sort of cut out of books. And we'll look at a few towards the end of this event. And they were all digitized and they were put online. And I think Susanna has some links that she'll drop in if you want to see more about the project. And so as we were reaching the end, we wanted to do something that wasn't online, ironically. We wanted to do something in person where people could come and see some of these manuscripts and celebrate them. So I was invited to curate this exhibition at the Free Library, and my colleague, Nick Herman, who is the Sims Curator of Manuscripts at the University of Pennsylvania. I didn't actually introduce myself. I am the Curator of Digital Research Services at the University of Pennsylvania. So I'm trained in medieval studies, and I've been working in digital humanities and libraries for a long time. And so I played a very big role in the digitization project. And then I was asked to curate this exhibition. So that's how that happened. But Nick Herman organized an exhibition at Penn that actually got to open. We joke about this. His exhibition got to open. It opened in February, and then it did have to close again. But so what I wanted to do was create an exhibition that sought to bring the Middle Ages closer to us. Because I think that there's a tendency when we think about the Middle Ages to think about how strange it was and how weird everybody was and how different it was, which is true. So the Middle Ages was very different from us, and people did think about things in a different way. But I wanted to find ways that I could say, point to and say they weren't actually so different. They were still people. They were human, and they had the same kind of concerns that we do. So I organized an exhibition divided into 5 sections: family, labor, the natural world, religion, and law and justice, which are all things that we think about today. And I went through all of the manuscripts that we digitized for this larger project, and selected some that I thought really reflected these concepts in ways that we could look at and find something familiar. One of the things that I didn't actually include in the exhibition was music. So it's really wonderful that we have Adam here today to talk about music, to add something that wasn't really a part of my original conception. I just want to show you a few more photographs of this beautiful, I just want you all to say, oh God, it was really, really beautiful. So here's the gallery, the Dietrich Gallery, on the top floor of the library. And here are a few other photos. If you see these scrolls on the wall are facsimiles of scrolls that are here. And so they were actually set up so you could pull on them. Like we got the idea from curtains at a hotel where you sort of, or in an office building where you scroll them up and down. And so you could scroll through these. So it's really a shame that didn't happen. Here's this another view. One of the things that I wanted to do, as I said, was bring the Middle Ages closer. So in this photo, there is a document that showed, it was for an English law that shows the price of different loaves of bread, depending on the type of flour that's used and the quality. And so next to that, we have a menu of bread from the Metropolitan Bakery to sort of show this idea. And here's just another pretty photograph of the rolls in that. And another photo of this one of a book of hours. And we'll look at a couple of these when I do my presentation towards the end. But I just, right before Adam starts, I want to point you to the digital exhibition that's online and invite you to see that. It doesn't include everything from the gallery exhibition, but it gives you sort of a taste of what's there. And so now I want to pass it along to Adam to start his presentation. I think do you need this yet?
I don't think, not quite yet.
Okay, then I will stop, maybe I'll stop sharing until it's time to bring that back.
Thank
Adam.
you so much, Dot.
You're
really
welcome.
Appreciate it. And yeah, Adam Ward, I would love if you could start us off by telling us a little bit about where you're coming from. And then whenever you're ready, jump into your presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Susanna and Dot, for having me. My name is Adam Ward, and gosh, let's see, where to start? Susanna and I met when we went to grad school together, and I was studying French horn performance there. And so I'm by trade a French horn player, but I always loved singing, and I found my career singing in a group called Chanticleer, which is an all-male vocal ensemble based here in San Francisco. And we sing music from the inception of music and from Gregorian chant all the way until anything written today. So a big part of our mission is not only to preserve medieval and Renaissance music, but also to commission new choral works. So we really span the gamut of music history and style. So a little bit of what I think we're going to explore today is in song, in vocal music, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the horn too. But Susanna and I were interested a lot in at the time, during the medieval period, there was a amalgamation of secular music and sacred music, and how they come together. I want to first talk about a little bit about Hildegard von Bingen. She is undoubtedly one of the most important composers in our history. She lived in Germany from about 1098 to 1179, and she was a nun. And she did all sorts of stuff. She was a spiritual, she was a mystic, she was a leader of, in her circles, and she was then later canonized by the Catholic Church. But there's one example of her music that I think we decided to use because it features Chanticleer, and it also features yours truly. But this piece is called O Frondens Virga. And the translation of this is, O blooming branch, you stand upright in your nobility as breaks the dawn on high. Rejoice now and be glad, and deign to free us, frail and weakened from the wicked habits of our age. Stretch forth your hand to lift us upright. So this woman in the 1100s wrote that, and she composed this music, which is essentially what we know today as Gregorian chant. So this is a recording from, I believe, almost 10 years ago in Russia, I think. And just so I can let you know that there are some pieces where one needs to dig deeper than others. And this, above any piece I can remember ever singing or performing, that I had to disconnect from myself and reach out and find Hildegard von Bingen and hold her hand so that she can sing this song with me. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but the space where I had to go to sing this song was quite spiritual. So I had to close my eyes a lot and really reach for her spirit to guide me in singing this song. So I hope you enjoy O Frondens Virga by Hildegard von Bingen, performed by Chanticleer.
Oh,
So, am I there? Am I here? Okay, good.
Sorry
Great.
about that.
No problem. So that was Offrandens Virga by Hildegard von Bingen from roughly the 1100s, which is a good example of chant. Now, that was, of course, completely sacred texts. And there, I want to talk about a really, really popular tune that was popular about 400 years later. And it's important for a lot of reasons, because it was one of the most popular tunes of its day. And it's a great example of how secular music and sacred music kind of went like that. The next piece I want to talk to you about is called L'Homme Armé, which means the armed man. And it's in French. The text, if I can speak it in French, L'Homme Armé doit en douter. On a fait partout crier que chacun se vienne armé. D'un aubrigand de fait, l'homme armé doit en douter. Which translates roughly, that was Old French, so I don't know if any contemporary French speakers would understand what I just said, but it means the armed man should be feared. Everywhere it has proclaimed that each man arm himself with a coat of iron mail. The armed man should be feared. So this is from a like Burgundian school secular song from the late Middle Ages. Because it was so popular, composers used this tune to write their their sacred music. So what they did was, when they wrote a mass, which the mass is the Kyrie, Gloria, Credo, Sanctus, Benedictus, and Agnus Dei, they would use this tune in every movement as a basis, and that's called a cantus firmus. So they would use this tune, which you will hear momentarily, as they would treat it almost like Gregorian chant, the single line. And then they would write all of this filigree around it. So they would create what's called polyphonic music, which means more than one voice. Gregorian chant is monophonic. So the Hildegard we heard earlier was monophonic. So a little later, we're getting into polyphonic music. No one really knows where this tune came from. It could have been from, like just a drinking song. They think maybe it was commissioned from this guy named Charles the Bold, because he liked it, because he heard the melody being kind of sung in a combination of like trumpet and kind of cries from the street. How no one really knows, but it's it was really popular at that time. So Dot, let's hear L'Homme Armé. So this recording it'll give you they're going to sing just the plain tune, and then we're gonna hear the first part of the Kyrie. And we'll see if you can pick out the cantus firmus. Great. So that was the first Kyrie from Dufay's Mass. I'll go on to say that when composers put a secular tune into their sacred masses, they were called parody masses because the tune is a parody of something else. One thing that Susanna and I were really interested in was kind of this idea of protest. And this is a really good example of this song was it first appeared, the tune first appeared during the fall of Constantinople to the Ottoman Turks. So this was kind of the tune Le Marmé was, you know, I mean, it's sung with urgency, and it's because of the sort of, it was used as a battle cry, sort of in organizing the military opposition against the Ottomans. So that was Dufay's Missa Le Marmé. So I told you that sort of one of the origins of this tune was by a combination of a street cry and a trumpet call. So, okay, well, what does that mean? You know, because, well, what were they doing with horns and trumpets at the time? And so I guess we'll go into sort of the second part of why I'm here is sort of my experience as a French horn player. Is because the horn was going through you know, people were figuring out what this was and how to use it. Around the same time, composers were thinking about sacred versus secular and how to put them together. So in the instrumental world at this time, they were thinking about what, you know, was how the primary use of the horn at that time was for hunting and for battle. But eventually, at this time, they were beginning to use it more creatively in music. So let's go to around the time of Hildegard again, and let's look at that first picture on our list there. So this is like a sheep's horn. A goat's horn is a little more spirally. So this is a sheep. And you can see on the left side of the screen, it almost looks like, well, it's like a mouthpiece you'd see today. And I have a trumpet here, and it looks like, so this was used this was used by shepherds, and however they did their shepherding. And this was like more like played like a trumpet. Let's go to the second example, Dot. And this one has holes in it. So this one is, I believe some of them were played, this was played more like an ocarina, which is more like in the flute family. So there would be some, like, so instead of buzzing your lips, it would be blown into somehow, it would create a more flute-like effect. And these were the first examples of people using these horns to make sound. And so once we figure out how to make metal, let's go to the next example. Let's see what that is. Okay, this is a modernized example of a Roman horn. This is the predecessor to trumpet, trombone, and tuba. So the bore is wider, and this was, they were using this in battle. And so this wasn't hunting. This is like military, like pomp and circumstance in battle. Let's go to the next example. I just liked this picture. This is the same thing, but from a manuscript. I don't know what he's doing with that other horn, but we'll leave that to our imagination. Let's move on. Okay, so this is called a bucina. This was also a Roman horn. And this was clearly, you can see the guy he's dressed for battle. And it's more of a, they had to start getting partials, which a partial is, so those ram's horns, they were only, or the sheep horns, they were only about this long. But to get, when they started needing longer tubes to make more notes from the harmonic series, and I'll talk about that in a minute, they had to start coiling them. Let's see, what's next on our list of pictures, Dot? Okay, yeah, so then they really started coiling them up. And so this is an example of horns that were coiled so that huntsmen could have these long horns and carry them on themselves on a horse. So they would be wrapped around they'd carry them around the shoulder, they'd be wrapped around the arm. And the mouthpiece it was all this one thing, the mouthpiece would be attached, and it would be quite a solid structure. So they could be riding around on their horse and calling out to their other fellow huntsmen. And this was more of they were doing this, I think, first in France. And so that's why we know today this apparatus, well, known as a French horn. So this coiled thingy that they were using hunting, which was the French called corde de chasse, which is hunting horn. Let's see the next example, Dot. So, right, by the time it was first used in about the 16th century operas, this was being used to play music. So it took a long time for it to start becoming a musical instrument rather than just a functional instrument. One thing to know about what they were using as hunters was that they were really only playing one note, and whatever note they chose was, the skill of the hunter's horn playing. Whatever note they really wanted. What mattered was the rhythm at which they played. So without really thinking about what note, they could play. So that might be a call to other huntsmen out there, like, hey, I'm over here. Or other rhythms might mean something else. So, but this instrument that we see here is designed to really play the entirety of what we call the overtone series or natural harmonics. So I'll just demonstrate that right now on my instrument, which is the modern horn. As you can see, in the 19th century, we got valves, which means that I have about, let's see, oh gosh, 6 of these things of these natural horns built into this one. So if I take, let's say, the key of F, and I'll play for you the natural harmonic series, which was all we have on this valveless horn. So I have all of those notes available to me without having to press any of the valves down. So what horn players in Mozart's day, they would use their hand to change the pitch of if they needed a pitch that wasn't in the natural harmonic series, they would do something like this. Which I totally failed, but as you can see, when you move the hand inside the bell, it can change the pitch. So they were so that's how they were playing the horn in Mozart operas, those horn concertos that Mozart wrote, and Haydn, and all of our favorite classical composers. That's how the French horns were functioning at that time, which was not a far cry from those huntsmen in the all during the medieval period. The trumpet, for example, that long bucina-like instrument developed into the trumpet. And one thing about the trumpet is that they're working on fewer partials. So this is pitched about it's an octave and a fifth higher than the French horn. So I only have basically the first few partials before it starts getting too high for me. So one thing that makes the horn difficult is that since the partials get closer and closer together, we have more room for error. So when I'm trying to hit a note on the horn, my dartboard is twice as far away as the trumpet players. So I have much more room for error as a French horn player than a trumpet player, which is the reason the horn is considered a more difficult instrument. Let's see. Gosh, I mean, there's so much to say. What, Susanna or Dot, do you have any questions? Was I not clear on anything?
No, that was wonderful, Adam. And I'm sure based on the comments, everyone is really appreciating what you've shared so far. I want to give people an opportunity to share further comments and questions in the chat, which is really the best place to drop those. And then I'll also read out some of the comments that have been shared so far. A lot of shout outs to Chanticleer, really a beautiful, beautiful group. And I know you just gave us a sample, but people are saying, you know, they like to listen to Chanticleer during Christmas time, and they're going to be adding them to the year round playlist. Just so gorgeous. Those horns are super cool. Scribe humor. Someone gave an interpretation of that image with the two horns. Um, really fun stuff. But yeah, I would love to hear questions in the chat. I also know there was another question in the Q&A section around, you know, is the medieval period exclusive to Europe? So this is the last of a series of programs that I put together as part of Medieval Life. Medieval Life features a lot of manuscripts that are come from Western Europe. There are other items that have a more global perspective, and this was a time period just like our own that was very global. There were many things happening across the globe that were of great interest, and this particular exhibit has manuscripts from a particular time period and a particular region, mostly focused on Western Europe, but we have upcoming exhibits that will take a different approach. And, you know, it's been really neat to do this series because this series also kind of gets at like, what was that global medieval period? What did the Middle Ages look like across the globe? What were the kinds of exchanges that were happening, the relationships, so on and so forth. So I hope that answers that question. And then I'm just going back into the chat. And here's a question. Did nobility commission all of the music?
Well, I mean, certainly the music that was being commissioned at that time during, you know, Dufay's time and Josquin during that period of around the 14, 15, 1600s was these masses. I mean, it was all of the Catholic Church. And so there was a lot of money behind that. And also, and then I think, I mean, I can't be sure, you know, how the timeline exactly on this, but, you know, for example, like composers like Mozart weren't employed by the church; they were employed by private courts of nobility. So I would say, I mean, definitely this Dufay piece that we just heard, that was, you know, he was writing that directly for the church. And how that was commissioned, I'm not sure. I would like to say, may I say something about the, you know, something about about the horn anyway. It's at the same time, archaeologists have found horns on the Indian subcontinent that were similar in shape and function, which was for battle. And so these Indian subcontinent horns, there's a few names, Ramsingha, Ransingha, something like that, which is basically Sanskrit for war horn. So it's interesting that it, like, the same thing was happening simultaneously in a completely different part of the world. But, you know, kind of our, you know, this, you know, the instruments that we're playing today in Western orchestras obviously have our descendants from our European ancestors.
Thanks, Adam. And certainly when we had our Astrolabe program and other programs that I'm thinking of, there were, you know, many examples of the kinds of exchanges and travels that took place where, you know, we would see the ways that information and innovation traveled. So I think there's definitely more examples there depending on where people's expertise lies. So as people are continuing to think about questions and comments that they want to share, I just want to thank Adam for everything that you've shared. And if if it works, we'll turn it over to Dot. She'll give us a little bit more information about the exhibit, and then we'll have time for a little bit more Q&A. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me. So I'm going to share my screen again because I have some things to share, some medieval manuscripts to share, because that's what I have. Let me share my screen. And first we'll see the horn and we'll move on from there. So I said that, first of all, thank you, Adam. That was really fun. And I think that what I'm going to show will complement what you've been talking about a little bit. So I mentioned that I didn't have any music in the exhibition, but we do have a lot of music manuscripts in Philadelphia and that have been digitized. So I went onto our website and I did some searching and I found some interesting ones. So I'll just sort of walk you through. The first couple of examples are early, relatively early examples. So this one is from around 950 to 1050 from Germany. And this is, when you talk about medieval music, you could be talking about a few different things. And one of the things you could be talking about is music written in manuscripts. And here we have an early example using what are called neumes. So when we think of music, you probably, like written music, you probably think of something like what was in the video for the piece that we watched. So it's like you have a staff, which is lines, and then there are notes written on the lines and you can follow them. Neumes are not like that. And the neumes here, if you haven't seen them already, are down here at the bottom. So this little section here, and it's sort of suggestive rather than being, it's not like reading music. In order to make sense of the neumes, you sort of already have to know what the tune is. But it's sort of to suggest how you go about singing or chanting those. And this, Adam mentioned in his talk that you could either have a single part or multiple parts, and this is obviously mono. What was the term that you used, Adam?
So, monophonic.
Monophonic, thank you.
Polyphonic.
As opposed to polyphonic.
Yeah.
Right.
And I have an example of neumes right here. This is the Hildegard.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so it looks different than our regular music notation that we know today. And there's like diamonds and squares, and there's and it's, so anyone reading, a modern day musician seeing this music would have little idea. But I, of course, being in Chanticleer, they train us to read this.
To read that. Yes, and actually I was in my earlier days, I was a music person, and so I also learned to read that. And I have a couple of examples that are more like that. So these are just very suggestive. And here's another one where you can see here that the notes are just sort of little kind of squiggly lines written just above the words to sort of suggest what that might be. And this is from a breviary. So both this one and the one before are from liturgical manuscripts. So these would have been manuscripts that were in a church, maybe in a monastery, that people would have used during a church service. And this is also from the Free Library. But this one, the date and location are unknown, but it's, I think it's pretty early given the music. So this is more, this is a little bit later. So this is early 14th century from Flanders. And these are very common now. So these were very popular kinds of, this is an antiphonary, so another liturgical book. These would have been very common. You would have found them in every church. This is a very nice one. You've got a beautiful historiated initial up at the top. And this is a little more advanced, music notation. So you actually have a staff, and as Adam pointed out on the one, you have the little squares and you have these, and this you can actually read. So Adam could, one could read this music and actually sing it. And here is another one, again, this is, the location and date is unknown. All of the ones that I've shown you so far are leaves that were removed from a book. So these don't have the context of a book to sort of help you figure out what they are. They are pages that have been pulled out. And a lot of manuscripts, you know, a lot of manuscript that survives in pieces because books were taken apart and, you know, and only survive in pages and stuff, which is why this isn't datable or, you know, able to be dated or what we say located. So we don't actually know where it's from just because there isn't enough of it to know that. But we've got this, we've got the music here. So this is another example, and you're looking at it, you're like, why does it look like that? Well, this is a leaf from a music manuscript, and it's even the piece of music that is contained in it has even been sort of identified. So it's believed that it's from this particular religious motet. But it survives as the binding of another manuscript. So the reason it looks like this is because it's been used to cover the boards of some other kind of manuscript. And I don't have the information of manuscript, but the music itself is the second half of the 16th century. So this is quite late. And this happens quite frequently, where if you had a book, either the book was damaged or you just didn't need it anymore, then the book would be taken apart, and oftentimes you will find leaves used as parts of bindings. And in this case, it's the entire sort of front cover of this manuscript, and it is upside down. So they didn't particularly care, they just needed something to cover the board, so that's why it survives. But it survives, and we can identify it, which is sort of interesting. Let's see, next. So this is another piece, and the reason that we have this is another little Lewis manuscript. This is actually a piece that's been cut out of a page. So you can see the line here is actually where it's been cut. It was cut out because it's got this pretty piece, so somebody thought, well, that looks nice, and you know, chop it up. But it happens to have some music. It was a music manuscript, so we have a little bit of music there. And this is another way that music and other kinds of manuscripts come down to us, because they've been cut out for other reasons, but we still then sort of have that information, and for scholars that can be helpful to study. So that's music notation, which is interesting in one way. And then we also have images of musical instruments. And I have some examples here. We saw, you know, one that Adam showed, which is a very common way that we see musical instruments illustrated in manuscripts, sort of in the margins. One character who often is illustrated with an instrument is King David. He was a poet, and he wrote poetry, he wrote the Psalms, right? And he played the harp. So lots and lots of miniatures, that is small paintings in manuscripts of King David playing the harp. And here he is playing the harp in this Book of Hours. A lot of these that we're going to look at in this next section are from Books of Hours. Books of Hours were sort of personal prayer books that people, nobility had them, merchants who had money would have them. You did need a certain amount of money to have a Book of Hours, because it was sort of a prayer book that was based on the prayers, the daily prayers that monks and nuns did in monasteries. And so starting from about the sort of early 14th century into the 15th and to the 16th centuries, people who were Christian, religious, sort of regular people, that we want to be like that. We want to emulate that. And so the Book of Hours became a very common thing. And one of the things that Books of Hours have is pretty pictures of sometimes of musical instruments. So there's King David playing the harp. Here is another Book of Hours. This one is from France, from about 1500. And the scene here is called the Annunciation. So you have the angel has come to Mary, you are going to have God's child. And you can see in the margins on either side, we have two angels, and one of them, the one on the left, has a harp, and the one on the right has a lute, which is another kind of stringed instrument. So angels will very often be found pictured with musical instruments. And this is a sort of a thing that holds out for today. So if you ask, anybody about angels, oh yeah, they, fly in the sky and play harps. And the reason that we think that is because it was a very common thing that you saw in medieval manuscripts. So moving on from those, so this is, if you look down in the left-hand corner of this, here is a man horn hunting deer, which I've misspelled, but the deer is over here. You can see his horns just coming up, and he's got his horn. And so this is sort of an example of a real life picture drawn in the margins of this manuscript. And he's got his dogs, and he's calling out to them. And here is another horn. This is from the Louis Psalter, which is from Paris, from the early to mid 13th century. And the next slide will zoom in a little bit, but this is to sort of give you the sense of scale. So this is quite a large page, and this illustration is very small right here, but if we zoom in, there he is with his horn. And again, this will look quite familiar. It's not coiled like the other ones, but it's a sort of straight one there. So this is another one where I'm giving you two slides just to show the scale. So this is a Bible. This is quite a large manuscript. You can see the writing is fairly small, and there's a lot of things happening sort of in the margins. There's an illustration or a historiated initial at the top. If you look all the way at the bottom, there's a little rabbit playing a horn. And here is that rabbit. He is, and this is just kind of fun, and you see this a lot. So in the first one, we had the hunter, out to the hunt with his dogs, hunting for deer. And you know that if that hunter found a rabbit, he would very happily kill the rabbit. And here we're turning turning it around. We have the rabbit. He's the one with the horn. He's the one with the power. This is just a great thing that you see a lot in margins. Finally, I thought this was really interesting to see. So this is somebody playing an organ, a pipe organ. So you see the pipes and the keyboard. Don't know if it's very true to life, but it's, it was the only thing like it that I saw in our collection. And that was just a really neat thing to see, because this is compared to a harp and a horn, which are quite simple to draw. This is a little bit more advanced. And so it's interesting that the person who drew this chose to do it. And maybe there's a story behind it. There wasn't any information in the catalog, I don't know, but it's still a very interesting one. So we have musical notation, and then we have musical instruments. And then you have music as a sort of intellectual study. And Pythagoras was a classical, much, much earlier scholar who wrote about music as a sort of mathematical thing. He thought about, and having studied musical theory, you do think about music like this today, and it's sort of coming out from him. And so he wrote a lot of sort of texts sort of explaining his theory. And we have a copy at the University of Pennsylvania, which is it's actually a text by Boethius that is influenced by Pythagoras. And so these illustrations here, these diagrams, are illustrating these musical theories. And so these are very simple ones. And the same book also has these much more complex ones. So lots of different ways to sort of think about music, both as a thing that you read off the page and express to God. things that you make noise and you play, and also this sort of thinking about it in a sort of intellectual way. And that's everything from me. And if we have more questions or things to talk about, thank you very much. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can go back to discussion.
Thank you so much, Dot and Adam. This was really a wonderful way to close out this fantastic exhibit. I will drop the link for the digital exhibit that you can access from home in the chat. And then I would also encourage you all to, we have about 15 minutes left if we want to go for the full time, to share your questions and comments. And I also have something that maybe Dot can speak to a little bit more. For folks that really want to explore more of these materials, what are the best places to do that, given that this exhibit is being used to highlight digital resources?
Oh gosh, do you mean medieval manuscripts? So you can go to if you just want to find more manuscripts, you can go to the bibliophily manuscript search sort of website where you can search for manuscripts. So for example, when I was putting my exhibition together, I searched for music and I searched for horn, and I think I searched for harp because I figured there would be some King David with the harp there. I've also done searches for dragons and snails, which are fun because they show up a lot in margins. So that's kind of a fun thing to do. You can also go to, if you just want to find out more about the exhibition, you can follow the link that Susanna just dropped in the chat that goes directly to the web, sort of the intro. It's not really an introduction, but like the taste of medieval life is how I think about it. And eventually, there will be, we still have to figure out exactly how this will work, but they let me in with my phone, and so I took a video of the whole exhibition, and that's being edited, and I'd like to put that up along with the recordings of all of these programs, which really add a lot to that experience. And I want to write blog posts, but I'm still working on. But there will be more sort of coming out of it. So even though the exhibition didn't open, there's still ways to experience it. And I wanted to follow up just really quickly on the question about the medieval period. Periodization is something that we sort of talk about and think about a lot as medievalists. So obviously that period of time was happening all over the world, and there were a lot of these that you mentioned, Susanna, these sort of people traveled a lot and people communicated, and so it wasn't like Europe was sort of sitting by itself and never contacting anyone. But when we talk about the Middle Ages, we really are talking about Europe, because other parts of the world have their own ways of describing their periodization. So there would be, so when I talk about the Middle Ages, I really am sort of pretty much talking about Europe. And if I was talking about what was happening at the same time in another part of the world, I might use different terms to describe it. Just because people in other parts of the world describe their periods in different ways. So that's just a way to sort of respect that. But obviously, there was awesome stuff happening everywhere, and there were manuscripts being written in the Middle East and in Asia and elsewhere during the same period of time. And they were aware of it. People in Europe were aware of people in other parts of the world. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dot. And I think, for people that are interested in more of the conversations around this concept, global Middle Ages is a really kind of key term that I think a lot of people are using and really kind of incorporating into contemporary scholarship. So that's another opportunity to dig a little deeper. I know folks are, kind of slipping away for dinner and everything, but I just want to give Adam a chance to let us know about ways that we can continue to follow his work through Chanticleer and other venues, especially during these COVID times. So Adam, could you tell us a little bit more about how we can follow your work?
Oh gosh. Well, our website is chanticleer.org, chanticleer.org. And, we're on all of the things like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that. So whatever you prefer, Chanticleer will be there. We have been doing some virtual concerts that I don't think are available now, but definitely subscribe to our YouTube page, because the things that we've been doing during COVID, our socially distanced concerts and all of our virtual digital kind of virtual choir stuff is going to be on YouTube. So check us out there. Chanticleer.org is a good place to start.
Beautiful. Well, thanks to everyone for joining us. Thank you again to Adam coming in from San Francisco, California. Dot, not too far from me here in Pennsylvania. And I just really want to express my gratitude to everyone who's joined us for this series, and my colleagues at the Free Library of Philadelphia for being able to work together on this exhibit. And we have more to come, freelibrary.org/exhibitions. All right, thanks again for joining us, and we hope to see you soon. We actually have a program later this week, so check us out. Bye-bye.